Hey there and welcome. I am really happy to be with you today and it's so good to have you. Witchy11, thank you for joining us on Instagram. I would love it if you would each take just a moment, if you haven't already done so, and introduce us to you just a little bit, like where you're from and what is your background in holistic health. Are you a herbalist, a nutritionist, a naturopath? What is your background? I would love to know that. I would also love to know if you have a question, if you've seen information about iridology that is conflicting, maybe from two different teachers or two different videos, and you would like clarification on that. Because today that's exactly what we're doing. We are clearing up the confusion. We are dealing with what I affectionately call myths and fables. And so just as we've got that coming up, I'm going to pop my camera around for my Hybridology, or for my, I've lost that control. I do not know now how to pop my camera around for my Instagram group. And Lorraine is from France. Ah, I knew you were. Like I said, international group today. That is so cool. Okay, so I was trying to turn my camera phone around and there's something has changed in that, so I can't do that. Oh, you know what I could do? I can try this. I don't know if you can see my face here. I'll have to re-aim things frequently. There we go. Okay, hi there. So those of you who are on Instagram, want to introduce myself. My name is Judith Kopp. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, certified iridologist, and certified iridology instructor. I have been a holistic health coach for over 4 decades now. This is what I did instead of finishing my university training to be an elementary school teacher. I have written many books that were self-published, Herbally, Pregnancy Naturally, Healthy Kids Naturally, a whole bunch of books, and I don't even remember all the titles now, Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, lots of different things. Over the years of my training, I have been certified as an iridologist through 4 different organizations. I've had 8 different teachers. I've got herbal certifications from several different schools and nutrition certifications from several different schools as well. And so as we are going into this, you're not spending your time today with someone who is still wet behind the ears, who is a new kid on the block and is super excited about this. You're spending time with someone who has really been testing and trying and proving and disproving things over 40 years. That's like, I'm in my early 60s now. So it's more than 2/3 of my life that I have been in this industry and not accepting everything I've been taught as gospel true, right? And so while we're doing this, let's just dive in. Let's just dive in. Okay, so I'm going to pop my camera around the other way. For those of you who are with us on Instagram, hello, Michelle and Sarah and Sasha. So good to see you. Thank you for being there with us. Again, I am an IPA certified iridologist and an IPA certified iridology instructor. Oh, here's my list of books. Haha. Pregnancy Naturally, Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2. And I've written the textbook for my Dynamic Iridology course, and it's a 200-page textbook. I've also created a lot of herbal courses and other courses. I created a 20-hour Herbology Level 1 course, which was meant for people to learn how to use herbs within their families and their homes. And then a more advanced 16-hour Herbology Level 2, again, teaching people how to take charge of their health by using herbs and nutrition in their homes. I've designed and taught Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2. Prenatal classes. I was for several years an ICEA certified prenatal educator. And of course, I've designed and do teach the Dynamic Iridology Assessment course, which is an IPA approved program for preparing students to certify with IPA as iridologists. So stay with me to the end of today's workshop to learn a little bit more. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I'll teach you a little bit about the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course that is starting in just a couple of weeks. Alrighty, so are you ready now to actually do some iridology? Yeah. If you are, I love engagement, and the more you engage with me, the more you'll get out of me. So if you are ready to learn about some of the myths and fables, I would like to see the comment myths in the chat box or in the comments box. Just give me myths, and then I'll know you are ready to roll. Hello, Debra Lynn. So good to see you in the Facebook group. Welcome, welcome. Alrighty, so here we are looking at the very first myth. The very first myth is to do with the owl story. And I want to know if you've heard this story before. And the story goes like this, that Ignaz von Petschle was a young boy of 11 years old. That much we know is accurate. And we don't know from there how the story actually goes. We don't know if he caught an owl or a hawk, whether the owl, whether in the process of catching this bird, a wing or a leg was broken, or whether the bird had the broken wing or leg and Ignaz caught him then, we don't know. What we do know is that Ignaz tells the story that he saw a black line in the bird's eye, and that over time, as he nursed this bird back to health, the line disappeared. Now, why is that a myth? It's a myth because it has never been replicated. Do you think that with all of the bird rescue sanctuaries there are in the world, that some veterinarian there might have seen something similar in the last 100 and some odd years? I would think so. Bill Cardona, who is one of the founders of the International Iridology Practitioners Association, said modern iridology can't explain the owl story. Von Petschle's story from a very long time ago has not been reproduced, so it's just a waste of time to repeat it. It just creates confusion. Oh, there's that word. Critical thinking is required when applied to any topic. All right. If you look, he continues, at a picture of an owl's eye or most any animal, the structure of the iris is different from humans. There is no anterior stroma, just a smooth posterior leaf without individual strands of fiber. So it would be structurally impossible to have this separation, this black line forming in a bird's eye. Interesting. Here is the next myth that we want to be looking at. You will see many places on Facebook and other social media where people are posting before and after pictures and saying, oh my goodness, look at the change. Look at how things have changed here. And some things that we need to be aware of, first off, is that the thing that usually changes is the technology. That's the very first thing. And the lighting source. Beyond that, hello, Rosie. Oh, thank you for introducing yourself. I truly appreciate that. The technology changes. So when we look at these two pictures that you see on the screen right now, same person, let's match up some markings. We've got something here. The camera is slightly tilted off, which is why they're not in, why it looks a little rotated. We've got something down here. So this is the same person. And so, and we've got this fiber down here that is doing its own little thing. Okay, so this is the same person. This is when he was 42. This is when he was 65. But I want you first and foremost to notice, and this is actually my husband. Okay, so you would think that in 23 years, and we've been married for 41 years now, you would think that in 23 years of me being pretty consistent with, you know, supplements and diet and lifestyle, that we would see some positive changes. And people will say, oh, but the image on the right is so much bluer, he must have done some cleansing. No, I want you to look first at the skin tones. Look at how different they are. To go from flesh color to this pink color, look at the color of the sclera and how the sclera on the image on the left is definitely whiter The one on the right is definitely pinker. So right there we know, and we look at the light artifacts. These are with different cameras and different lighting setups. So this was a print film camera, and this was an incandescent flash. Incandescent means it's going to be more yellow, right? This is a 24 megapixel digital camera with an LED flash, which is going to shoot more blue. When you change the color of the light you're using, you change the color of the image itself. Okay, so that is super important to recognize, that these before and after pictures, if they are not taken with the exact same equipment, the exact same lighting, the exact same technical settings inside the equipment, like f-stop, shutter speed, all that kind of stuff, you're going to have a different outcome in the images. And it does not prove cleansing or healing or deterioration. It simply proves that the technology changed. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, I want to see a makes sense in the comments box, please. Let me know that that made sense, because if it didn't, I will re-explain it. What we do know is that irides certainly don't change quickly. And we know that the irides accumulate things, they don't disperse things. Okay, so that is really important. We're not going to see someone does this intense cleanse and 2 weeks later, their sclera is an entirely different color. That doesn't happen. 40 years in the industry, folks, and I've never seen it once in spite of putting people through cleanses, monitoring them on very intense programs. And Katie and Debra Lynn are both saying it's logical, it makes sense. Thank you so much. They're with me in our private Facebook group. So the first thing is irides don't change quickly. And when they do, it's an accumulation. If we see, as we do in this set of eyes, that we have pigment that has accumulated, look right down here when he was 42, look right down here when he was 65, pigment has accumulated. Now, this tells us that inherently, genetically, there is something that is triggered. We're talking epigenetics here. Something has triggered a genetic expression in his body. And because we see this pigment and we understand what the pigment color means, we understand what the placement of this pigment means, we know what impact that genetic triggering, that epigenetic triggering of that expression means for him. All right. We need to also remember that the sclera, the white of the eye, is what we will see rapid changes in, where the iris is inherent / genetic. The sclera is very, very dynamic. And you know that if you've had a good hard cry and you ended up with bloodshot eyes, and then you thought, oh my goodness, I've got to go out. I can't, I need to do something, and you splash cold water on your face and you calm down, you give yourself an hour, and your eyes go back to looking nice and clear, right? Okay. So when we look at this image on the left, remember that this is a scan, a digital scan of a photographic print. And we've got so much tech difference here. Even look at the size of his pupil. From a photograph, we cannot assess that his pupil has come down because of physiological changes in his body, that he's done things to deal with parasympathetic and sympathetic system imbalances. Instead, the incandescent light was much less bright than the LED light. You know what happens to your pupils when you have bright light, right? It shrinks the pupils down. And so as we look at that, and let's do another comparison based on that, look at how much more pronounced these contraction furrows are here. I want you to think of these fibers as being fabric that is going to be folded like an accordion pleat. Do you know what accordion pleats are? If you think of an accordion that gets stretched out and then you squeeze it together and the bellows part of it goes all zigzaggy. Well, when we have a large pupil, this is like that accordion fabric that is now getting compressed. So it's going to go zigzaggy up and down. And that's going to make these appear deeper and darker. When we do the opposite and we stretch the accordion out, it's going to stretch the fibers out, and that is going to make these contraction furrows look shallower and less dark. They haven't healed. They haven't healed because contraction furrows are inherent, but they have gotten less deep simply because the pupil is smaller and it has stretched the fibers out. If that makes sense, I would love to see you put fibers in the comments so that I know that that piece made sense. Give me a fibers in the comments. But do notice that his sclera has changed. We have this Harry Potter scar, kind of a blood vessel up here. Look at how much brighter and thicker it is. And yet we have this tangential vessel, which has gotten much less. And we've got a lot of other blood vessel activity showing up in here as well. So we know that things are changing and they need to be monitored. All right. Excellent, Jenna. Thank you for letting me know that that made sense. Amazing. Hello, Tamara. Good to see you in the group. Okay. And so now what we've got going on is we're going to talk about the myth of healing lines. Now, these are my eye photos. And you'll see that even using the same camera, these were the same camera, and I'll explain why they are different colors, even with the same camera and the same lighting. It's because I was strung out on drugs. Well, maybe not quite, but let me tell you what happened. This was taken in 2017 when I got my new camera, and I was totally playing with it. Look, this is the area we are looking at right here. I had never broken a bone in my life until March of 2019, when I slipped on some ice, broke 2 bones in my wrist, ended up in surgery, now have 2 metal plates in my wrist. Thank you very much. Thank goodness for emergency surgery. And had just gotten the cast off. So we're talking like 8 weeks later. I fell down some stairs and I broke the olecranon, which is the nubby part of the elbow. Yeah, broke it right off the bone. Like there was a gap there, and I've got x-rays to prove it. So this photo was taken about 2 weeks after that break and that surgical repair, where I now have wires and screws in my elbow. All right, so these are different because, you know, when you've had that much medication and you're just thinking, grab the photos. I did not check to see what my camera settings were. I just went with whatever settings I had on the camera because the color wasn't important here. What was important is that we've been told that healing lines happen. That's old school. It's been disproven. And when we look at this from before the break to after the first repair, to after the second repair, to a couple months later, and we look at the fiber structure, we're only looking at fiber structure here, there is no difference. My arm has healed it nicely. In fact, I was just with my physio this morning for another issue, and he looked at my arm again and he said, wow, he said, most people don't heal up that well after what you went through. He said, but that's because you did your homework. And I certainly did my homework. So healing lines are a myth. They do not happen. That would imply the growth of new fibers, new trabeculae in the iris. We don't have that happening. All we see here is the same thing that was there from the beginning. All right, you ready to go on? Pigments equal toxins, you can cleanse them out. This is a huge debate because there are certain proponents on Facebook. Katie says, ouch. Ouch is right. Ouch is right. It was, that was a pretty intense, like 4 months. 4 months. I remember at one of my physio appointments going in and just being in tears over how frustrated I was. And my fabulous physio, he was so kind and gentle, as was his assistant. Not that he didn't inflict a little bit of pain that day like he always does, but very understanding, very compassionate, which I truly appreciated. All right, pigments. You're going to see on various social media, that there are people who will say that this means this person is highly toxic, that they need to have a cleanse, and they'll tell you all the organs that are in trouble. And while I agree that the pigment color teaches us about organs that are inherently wanting to be out of balance, and the placement of the pigment tells us which organs are going to suffer most because of that imbalance, totally agree with that. I do not agree with the idea that these can be cleansed out. Why do I not agree? Because 40 years has proven that to be false, that you can, has proven the idea false, that you can cleanse these out. You don't even need to cleanse these out. They give us information. And so when we look at this eye, these again are my husband's eyes, we see that he has the same pigment. It looks a little less here because this light is brighter. Bright light washes out pigment, right? It makes it look less visible. And so a little bit washed out here. And instead of this pigment disappearing with time and with good supplements and good diet and good lifestyle, I mean, we don't drink coffee, we don't smoke, we have a very active lifestyle, we eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. It's just, you know, it's just, we're very healthy people, but he has still accumulated this. So we don't cleanse these out. When people say, look at these before and after pictures, assess the photos very critically for technical value, right? Are the skin tones the same? Are the sclerotones the same? Is the lighting controlled, and is it the same? Because if any of those appear different, then your before and after pictures are not valid. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, I would love to see the comment valid in the comments, the chat. If you're on with me on Instagram, just drop valid in that comment box and let me know. Harry Wolf, who is the other founder of the International Iridology Practitioners Association, and he was the original person to bring constitutional iridology to North America some 50 or so years ago, said this. In fact, thank you, Debra and Tamara, lovely, and Katie, love it. Harry says this, in fact, it's bogus and a dogma only found among some holdouts from the Lindlar, Kreitzer, and Jensen schools of thought. The notion that certain metals, minerals, toxins routinely show up as diagnostic indicators in the iris has long been refuted and proven unreliable. There is no evidence to support the notion that heavy metal toxicity is measurable in the iris. Likewise, drugs, candida, etc. I can't tell you how many people come into my office having been somewhere else saying, this other person says I've got candida, look in my eyes and tell me. It's like, can't do that. That's what I call crystal ball iridology. And my crystal ball is broken. Okay. And so the dark spots, again, are any pigment is genetically predetermined, as is the overall color scheme. And Jenna, who's with us on the webinar, says valid. I am new to iridology and I'm learning so much. Thank you. Glad to get the correct info right from the start. Excellent. I'm glad you're with us, Jenna. We've also been taught that lacunae disappear with cleansing. Oh, right. Okay, now I see what I'm looking at. Okay, so I had to get my bearings on the photo here. So these were taken with the same camera, but look at the lighting, different illuminators. Okay, so that's the first thing I taught you today. Watch the lighting, right? You'll notice the lighting intensity and tone is fairly similar. The one on the right is a little bit brighter because it's washed out some of the blood vessels. So we know we're working with a slightly brighter light here than we were here. So what I want you to watch for is right here at 3 o'clock inside the collarette. Now these were taken on the very same day, like back to back, like shoot one picture, change the illuminator, shoot the other picture. This image, interestingly, even though I said it was brighter, is more directed, and that means it made the pupil sense it as being dimmer, so that made the pupil bigger. So now let's look at this 3 o'clock zone. Look right in here. We have these little tiny bits of lacunae in here. But again, going back to that accordion idea, because the pupil is small, the fibers are stretched out. That means that lacunae, which are gaps between fibers, get narrower. Does that make sense? You stretch the fibers out, it pulls it together. It's like taking a long, thin balloon that you've blown up and stretching it out. It's going to get thinner, right? When we have the pupil larger, so we have these fibers being compressed like an accordion, it's like taking a balloon and squishing it. So if we've got, again, a long, thin balloon, and if we can squish it this way, it's going to get fatter. That's what has happened here. Whereas years ago, we would have said going from here to here, oh, this person is cleansed. Look at how much healing. Those lacunae are so much narrower, but we don't care whether it's narrow or fat. If we could pour water into this would hold the same amount of water as this. So it's a volume thing. Does that make sense? And so lacunae don't disappear because we cleanse, because we take supplements, because we do all of this cool stuff. And Katie says, love the analogy, it helps. Yeah, I just heard that accordion analogy the other day from somewhere. I thought that is a good one. It just does make sense, doesn't it? Makes it so much easier. We all know it, and most of us know what an accordion is, and if you don't, you can look it up online. Another myth, you've got parasites, and I can see them, they're in your brain. All right, so we used to think 40 years ago that these black lines meant the person had parasites. We now know that is not accurate. We now know that this means a whole lot of things, but it does not mean parasites. Harry Wolff again said, American sources from the turn of the 20th century are very unreliable, repetitive, and misleading, with silly and debunked notions like drug spots, psoriatic itch spots, healing lines, parasite lines, and brown eyes turn blue with detox. Okay, so again, this does not mean parasites. What we see in the iris is always what is genetic, not what is transient. If I cannot pass this tendency, this condition onto my children through my genes, it's not going to show up in my irides. Okay. And so if I can see it in the irides, that means I can pass it on through my genes. Parasites don't change my genes. Right? Parasites don't change my genes. If I had parasites, I could not pass them on to my offspring through our genetic structure. Does that make sense? Okay. So we also cannot diagnose from the eyes. Oh, it drives me nuts when I see people making actually medical diagnosis from the eyes. Only licensed medical practitioners are legally allowed to diagnose. Even iridologists who are NDs and MDs do not diagnose and should not diagnose from the irides, except that there are some who are. Remember, I studied Jensenian iridology originally before I learned constitutional. This is way back in the very early 1980s, late 1979, 1980, 1981. And the way I was taught, I did a lot of diagnosing from the eyes back then. I told people what was wrong with them. And the funny thing is, I was usually wrong. Out of a list of 12 or 14 things that I would have said I could see in their eyes, they might have had one or two. Now, that's what you see happening on Facebook and on social media is people are diagnosing from the eyes, giving this long list. And then what we see is the people whose eyes are being analyzed will grab the one or two things that they know are accurate, and they will hold on to that and discard the rest that was inaccurate. So fast forward in my practice, I learned constitutional iridology in the early 1990s. And since then, because constitutional iridology, when you've got a solid foundation in anatomy and physiology, guides your questions. It guides how you speak with your client, and it helps you actually to gather more information, not to make a diagnosis, but to understand why things are the way they are in the body. And when you combine that with what the client is already doing for their health, you can then very easily decide what are the next steps this client should take to improve their health, not to change their eye color, not to remove a marking from the iris, but to change their health. And what, frankly, is more important, changing their eye color or improving their health, right? This isn't about changing eye color. Bill Caradonna, again, one of the founders of IPA, he is, back when I studied with him, he was my constitutional teacher. He was a registered pharmacist, and then, but he was going really holistic. And so he became a naturopath. Now he has a very busy naturopathic practice in Seattle. He says, iridology cannot be used to diagnose. It is a unique assessment tool to gain understanding of the blueprint of the body, including tendencies towards illness patterns or assessment of resiliency and resistance against negative influence. But diagnosing the presence or status of an illness or disease is never appropriate. I love that because I totally agree with him. And I've proven it, and that is absolutely correct. Hello, Ivanka. Hello, Naturals. Hello, Tuba. Good to see you with us on Instagram. Now, for the past several years, I've been teaching holistic wellness practitioners like you the art and science of constitutional iridology. Registration is open for the April class that starts on April 21st. And so I'd like to take just like 30 seconds to share some of the details of that with you so that you can see if it's something you'd be interested in investigating further. The dynamic iridology assessment system for holistic health practitioners is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care, so that those practitioners can stop working unpaid overtime to create their client programs, so that they can stop overwhelming their clients with programs that are just not manageable, so that they can create programs that will actually increase client compliance, success, and long-term retention. That is so important. Now, if you are interested, there we go, that's what I'm looking for here. Like I said, the next course start date is April 21st, but tomorrow night, April 9th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, we are going to do an info session. So it's a webinar that is just to give you information about the course, teach you maybe if you're already a practitioner and you're struggling a bit, give you some tips that don't even involve iridology as to how to be more successful in your practice. And again, we'll give you all of the details about the course as well, like how it's delivered, how much mentoring is provided, what is the tuition, how to get registered. So for those of you who are with me on the webinar, I have just posted the link for this webinar in the comments. For those of you who are with me on Facebook, I've posted it there as well. For those of you who are with me on Instagram, the URL is really easy. It's tinyurl.com/W -2021 -April-9. Okay, so if you would like that, again, just PM me and I can certainly send that to you directly. So tomorrow night at 5 p.m. we will be doing an info session. So if you've been thinking about learning iridology, or if you learned Jensenian iridology and you want to move forward into the areas that have new research which is the constitutional style that has had research going on for the last 40 or 50 years and is building on what we know and throwing away what doesn't work, then join me for the webinar tomorrow night and learn more about this course so that you can decide whether this progressing forward with constitutional iridology is what you want to do. All right. And so that's what I have for you tonight. Now, I did not see any questions come in from the beginning about things that you already, things that you'd seen that were conflicting information about iridology. So didn't see any of those. Are there any questions, conflicting information that we didn't debunk already that you would like more information on? I'll give you just a few seconds on that one, because I know there's about a 15 to 20 second lag with all of the platforms. And yeah, it's been so good to have you with me. I appreciate you taking 35 minutes out of your day to be with me on this. And I hope that that information has helped you to either confirm what you already knew about iridology, or has helped you to move forward in your iridology, or has kind of piqued your interest and has made you think, maybe it's time to learn or to upgrade what I knew. So again, I'm not seeing any questions come in. Thank you so much for being with me today. I truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again another day. Bye for now.